Wholeness, everybody. So we were on, I don't know, with Monica for like a while, and then realized that our mic was there was no sound. So, um, yeah. And it's Mercury retrograde. How fitting, right? It's
That's
Mercury.
what I was telling her. I don't doubt that that's what's happening right now. You know, she said it like it was a joke. I'm like, don't doubt that because
So
more
we
than
actually
likely
lost
it is what we're
Monica.
experiencing.
Yeah, we lost Monica because she had to go. She had give us until like 6, and she stayed past 6 for her time in California. And so yeah, and then I'm like, oh well, there's nothing I can do. Yeah. So our whole conversation is just like up, 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 up. At least we look pretty, right? Like we look pretty. That is hysterical. Like,
Oh
I
my
mean,
goodness. Hey, this is how we learn.
yes, how fitting, right? So, our main conversation today what is about the fact that we are starting Abundance Portal Facebook community group, right? Or Facebook has like all these groups that you can start, and we were like, oh, you know what? Let's start a group. So we're gonna do. So yes, we have the Abundance Portal page, but with the group, there's going to be more interaction with everyone, and people can come in, and so you can become a member in the group. And so what basically, like, what I'll do is, like, I'll just go into what the group is going to offer. So before I do that, we should introduce ourselves. So my name is Dea Swish B, and this is, let me see, she can hear me. Veronica. Introduce
Oh,
yourself.
my that's this. You know what? I'm just checking the sound. I wanted to see if there was any comments from
Well,
anybody tuning in.
were
What's
they
that?
like commenting?
Well, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, somebody had left in our initial, in the first one that we did, our first go. They had commented no sound, and so I wanted to really make sure that we're actually in
Wow.
sound right now.
Yeah. It's very hard, people do come in and out. And the thing is, like, with no sound, I mean, because I'm sharing through Zoom, if when we're doing the Facebook Live, it's like I can only see the Zoom. And then if I'm looking at like my page, it's like only people that are commenting on my page. It's like weird. It's like Facebook is like trying to personalize everything. So instead of seeing everything, you're really only seeing your part, which is like stupid, but whatever. I'm not badmouthing anybody. Um, but anyway, like, so we wanted to introduce that, so go ahead, Veronica.
Yeah, thank you, sis. Thank you. Okay, take two. I
My name is
mean,
Monica.
I mean, honestly, it's so much better this way. It's like this is what being in flow means. It's like it's just continuous. There is no real pause. There is no real pause. So
Like, I mean, that's one of the things we realize: this life is no skin off our back. We're good. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what you learn is that you're able to, all the little kinks, the deeper you go, the more you're able to smile about things because you really see that it's, this big cosmic joke,
Yeah.
essentially. So, my name is Veronica. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. You're so appreciated. I am a mother of two boys, Nicholas and Eric, who are in 5th grade and 8th grade currently. So lately I'm spending a lot of time homeschooling. I work from home. I am a writer. I'm in the middle of writing my first book right now. I am deeply into the path of consciousness and all things spirits, conduit of divine energy. I have a background in Kundalini yoga and meditation. Um, what else? I have also a background in heroin and meth addiction. So I really have had quite an experience in life, and I'm so grateful that I have found my tribe and a beautiful group of conscious members this planet that continue to contribute to my livelihood, my growth, my expansion, and my own understanding on a day-to-day basis. So, wellness, thank you.
Only that was beautiful introduction. I have to do something. So my name is Dea Swishby, and yeah, I'm also a mom of a beautiful, beautiful 10-year-old son, and I have been homeschooling him for the past year. That has been a journey into itself. So it's so funny, like when everybody started like experiencing the lockdown, I had no issues with him because we already had progress, and we're deep into the homeschooling journey. And so my spiritual path started like a few 5 years, I would say about 5 years ago, with a lot of deep search for knowledge. And so I'm which continues, of course. And it's again, it's been a journey in terms of like learning about myself, learning about the universe, learning about the innerverse, and discovering like what this plane that we live in is. Like I also joined the tribe, that Veronica, and that's how we met, joined as well, to Secret Energy. And learned so much, there from Savon. And we've basically grown. And we was like, okay, what is the question is like, when the journey to find Savon is not an easy thing, like like to find this master who's able to guide you through the journey is not an easy thing. There's not many who are like that good and that on point with the knowledge. I know because I researched. That was like part of the path. You
Exactly.
research a lot, like books after books after books, and YouTube and everything. So um and so like when like we were like, okay, you know what, for people at the beginning of their journey, like what do they need, like what kind of support, and this is what again the group is going to be about, the community support of like going through your spiritual journey, of finding yourself eventually. But it's like, why? Because there's so much out there, to help guide you through it, and to share like together, basically, like hey, this is what you need to do to help you. So yeah, so we're gonna do a Facebook group.
Yeah,
So
it's essentially the purpose of it is for it to not only support one another and support you all in these beginning stages, and introduce these different modalities and the different aspects of awakening, but it's really like an onboarding process into the limitless stages of awakening. Because essentially it's like, we were talking with our sister Neva, who by the way is an amazing consciousness coach, from Art of Inner Joy, and we were talking about it, I think yesterday, or no, it was a live that you did yesterday with her, which was amazing, by the way. If you guys haven't checked out that live with the sister and Neva, on Awaken Self Life, there's a great IGTV live on that. But essentially it's like when you get to, don't think that like you get to the ceiling, like essentially there is no ceiling, right? So the ceiling that you hit in one stage of awakening is just the beginning of the next. And then when you finish that, it's just the beginning, the end of one, and then the beginning of the next. And so this is the process over and over, and it's just a process of continuously meeting yourself over and over again, as Sister Neva likes to say often, because it's so accurate. You're just meeting yourself over and over and over again through different stages.
yeah, and again, it's a journey, right? It's like, so there's many paths to the journey. And so finding the path that's right for you is, can be cumbersome, can be troubling, can like, it can be isolating. That's one of the things that happens, because, most likely a lot of the people around you are not, the way you're at, like, and there's nothing wrong with where they are at. It's just that, like you're that one, you're that one going
Right.
spiritual journey, and
Right.
so you're speaking a different language almost than everybody
You
else.
are.
You understand things differently, and you see things differently. You know, some of your powers may start coming online. You know, we talk about this. You know, and so that's gonna have all sorts of effect on you, on your body. You know, on your on your mental well-being, on your physical well-being. And so it's like, how do you deal with that? Like, you know, because like for me, you know, for years I suffered, like, you know, what they call psychic headaches, and I didn't know what that was. And I didn't know, like, you know, how to protect myself, you know, against that, or that it was even a thing, you know, because you just think, oh, you know, I have headaches, like, you know what I mean? And while it was like a, you know, but I had headache in certain situations, you know, and discovering like, oh, you know, you're an empath. and and again, like I was telling the sisters, I had thought, oh, you know, empath was like, you know, that one of my favorite characters in Star Trek, not something that was like, oh no, that's you. And you know, because this is one of the gifts that we get, and it's really, how do you develop the power, how do you use it safely, you know, not hurt yourself, and you know, and also can use it for the to heal others. And you know, because what happened is, like, empaths are natural healers, so you'll find yourself gravitated to help people, to be there for people. And so you usually take on a lot, you know, in taking care of people. So therefore, like, your energy get overburdened, you know. So a lot of times you feel like people suck, like the suckingness of your energy, like,
Right.
yeah. So
Right. So and I love that you're bringing this up because especially as you are at the beginning stages, at the beginning phases of this, the most important thing is for us to learn how to even recognize this. Like how to even recognize it before even getting to the stage of like, yes, like developing it, because at the beginning, you know, you come to the awareness of something and then you just want to like jump from, you know, the beginning point to like just being having it developed. Like how do I do this, how do I, you know, acquire this power, you know, and you become kind of power hungry, and then you start learning like, well, actually, like this isn't where it's at, and you start to really balance things out. And like more to what the sister was saying, it's like when you start feeling, you know, you become aware that, oh, I really do have to learn to guard my energy and my field and my aura. And you know, I'm getting these psychic attacks or whatever it is you want to call it, whatever terminology, I'm getting these headaches. And you first come to the awareness and start to recognize, oh, so this is what I'm experiencing. And so if this is what I'm experiencing, and it's going, because it continues to happen, and it becomes something that's more frequent in your experience as you become more and more aware. And then you start to realize, okay, so then as an empath, as a healer, as I begin to develop these skills, it really means that in order for me to understand and bring balance into my life, that then my level of self-care and what, you know, my the cultivation of what your self-care practice looks like, it, you know, it really needs to amp up so that you're really balancing things out. So these are some of the things that we're going
and,
to be able to bring forward.
it's super important, you know, and I say this, it's super important to have a spiritual practice.
Yes.
And you know, in terms, and this was the thing as well, because when we always identify spirituality with religion, and so, like, you know, and you know, oh no, this isn't about religion at all. And so you tend to like reject having a formalized spiritual practice. Well, you know,
Right.
this is like, you have to train yourself like a, like literally like a warrior. When you start, when you are awakened to your spirit self, like it's gonna ask more from your physical self. So your physical
Yes.
self has to be on point. And you know, one of the things that I was saying before was that, you know, again, because we just had this whole conversation, you know, like a lot of times people diet, or people, you know, they go and they want to lose weight, or they diet, or they, yeah, how do you call it, exercise. And and this is more, like, you have to literally understand your body chemistry. Like, this is science. This is like there's like a whole set of like metaphysical science, that you have to learn so that you understand how the body works, how the body works with the spirit, like literally
Right.
how everything is connected. You have to understand how the emotion work with your physical body, how the physical body work with the emotions, how the emotions work with your spiritual body, and how the spiritual body works with your physical body. And it's like you have to literally understand all of the different bodies that you have and start to work within them. And that means you need to be clean. Like you have to clean yourself, and you have to clean yourself physically, you have to clean yourself mentally. So even what, like one of the things that I had found that was like I couldn't stand the TV, so I had to literally remove the TV from my room. And that was one thing, and at that time I needed to do that. Now the TV doesn't mean
That's
anything.
okay.
It doesn't mean anything to me, like if it's there or not. But at that point when I needed to clean my field and clean my space, I couldn't have it. So understanding like all of these things that you need to help you get to that next level, where a lot of the stuff that at the beginning of the stages of my journey I had are nothing to me now. But at the time I didn't even know like what I needed, what I because there wasn't, I mean, until I found secret energy, that
Right.
so it wasn't readily available to say, here's what you need, here's and so um so it's very important to have this place where you understand, hey, like yes, it's the beginning of the journey, but at the same time it is a lifelong journey, and I need to prepare myself, I need to clean my space, I need to clean my field, all of it,
Pace
um
myself.
yeah.
Like,
No, absolutely. And so because as your powers come online, your dream changes. Your like the people around you, like change as well. Like the friends that you have are not going to be the same friends. Like you'll find that you're not having the same conversation. You're not interested in the same conversation. I mean, a few years back, I was such a political nut. I mean, like CNN was like on 24/7. I jumped from CNN to MSNBC. Politics. You'd find me protesting, and it was and that was fine at that time because that's where I was. So don't get me wrong, but that has changed like 360 degrees, on my end. So, so meaning like things I had in common before, I don't have them now. Conversations with certain, like no longer interest me, or I understand them differently. That's the other thing too. Like you start to perceive different things differently, or it's the same thing differently. And sometimes you can't relate, or to a certain situation, because you see it in so many different ways and so many different layers. So it's important to have a community where you can share, where you can have somebody to talk to that understand what the hell you're talking about, and who's interested. One of the things that I had found, like one of my funniest story, I always like tell Jeff. One time I was talking to my cousin and she walked away. She literally, like in the middle
oh,
of
yeah.
talking, she just walked away, like, oh crazy, like because people will start to think maybe you're crazy because you talk, you start to have the different language of understanding, of saying certain words, of like of perceiving, especially as you acquire knowledge. And sometimes it can be like a lot of knowledge, like that's also one of the pitfalls, like I know I fell into, where you start acquiring knowledge, oh my goodness, like your brain like over gets over crazy.
It's overstimulation, and then you get to a point where you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
You just don't know what to do with it, and this is why I mentioned pacing yourself. This is why I mentioned like pacing yourself, because there really is no rush. I mean, you have infinity. So that's the thing, is like understanding the concept of like you literally have infinity. So what is the real rush, right? So it's like, but there is, but because we are in time, you know, there are periods where we go through periods of acceleration and everything, and so you have to find your pace. You really have to be able to find your pace, and it can get overwhelming if you don't have a place to go that provides community, that provides tribe, that provides support and love and understanding, and you know, basically people that are welcoming you and embracing you and holding your hand, you know, when you fall, because you will fall. You'll fall and you'll fall and you'll fall and you'll fall.
And the falling is part of it,
And
by the
it's part of it. And it's part of it. So just like expect that.
way.
Like just expect that. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
And you know, there are a lot of things that I experienced at the beginning, at the very beginning phases of my awakening, and that it would have been so helpful to have that, especially at the beginning, because one of the things that I will share that I experienced was that my awakening was a spontaneous awakening, meaning that it basically completely shattered the reality that I was living in. I mean, in an instant like this. And so my foundation, you know, my internal foundation was not properly prepared to support everything that was basically flooding in through me, and like my awareness just blew open, like my field just completely blew open, and I didn't understand what I was experiencing, and I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to, and I was so afraid. I was so afraid, because I also thought I was losing my mind. Like I thought I was insane, that, you know, and part of it was that I did go into a tiny psychosis. That was my experience. And I ended up, you know, homeless on the streets of Los Angeles. And these are real experiences that people can have. They don't have to, though. And so this is one of the things that really inspires me and motivates me about, you know, building abundance portals and bringing this group forward, is because these are things that I experienced, but it doesn't have to be your experience, you know, it doesn't have to be. And so I really love being able to be involved in something that is something that I needed in those moments of the beginning stages of my personal experience of my awakening. So
Yeah, and one of the things that we'll be able to bring forward is our vendors. Like, you know, we're gonna have an approved list of vendors, and these people are, you know, healers amongst our tribe, soul coaches, you know, among our tribe, that that understand, you know, that, you know, and even that understand like what the journey is, and they have those healing modalities ready to help. Because you know, when you're dealing with the spiritual world, it's not the same as, like, you know, you go into the doctor and the doctor is gonna just deal with your physical body, or if you go to a psychologist and the psychologist is gonna just deal with your mental body. And so you really, this, you know, the spiritual self asks that you deal with all of it. So you need this understanding from that point of view of like saying, okay, you know, the other day when we had our healing session, we had Holly doing a sound healing, and understanding that you can have whole sets of healing just to do with your vibrational field, so that she's touching not just your physical body, because you hear the music and you feel the shivers really on your body, but she's also now touching the fields that's, you know, outside and in, you know, in you, and also throughout time. That's one of the things with the sound healing, because the vibration not only just go, you know, through you, but also through time. So your whole timeline gets affected and gets healed. You know, that's one of the great thing about sound healing. You know, it can just heal, like, you know, from the time you have a session and it's like healing from the time you were 7 years old to even sometimes, like, it was funny. I was having that with her where she could tell that my son was next to me, and um and it's because, like, in that relationship was there all in the history of your vibration. And so like when we have trauma, we don't only have trauma to like the emotional body, we have trauma to like our whole etheric field. So fixing that, some people, like, it was funny, like in one of my classes today, mental share, was talking to this guy and said, hey, you have a hole in your aura.
The
And so,
tears, yeah.
like, that, hey, you're walking around, like literally walking and leaking energy. And because you have a hole. And sometimes if there's ways to seal those. And you don't know, and you may have a spot in your body where it always hurt and you don't know why, like, and you go to the physical doctor, they don't know why, they can't help you. And that's because that's it. It's more, it's like a spiritual thing that you might need to go to a spiritual healer. You might need to go to a sound healer to heal, on the etheric level, on the spiritual level. So this understanding, of like, hey, here we are, a group of healers who have gone. And that's one of the things about spiritual healers. You have to be tested spiritually. Like, meaning,
Yes.
the spirit will test you, and they'll be like, they'll make you go through the physical, the emotional, and then you're like, okay, graduate to the spiritual level. So you'll find a lot of the spiritual healers are very empathic because they've been through it. Like, they know.
They can recognize it because, that's another thing is that what we carry in our aura. You know what I mean? It's like what you carry in your aura. And the more that as a healer, you heal and you have all of these, things like mantras, even like encoded in your aura, literally. So you can essentially get to a space where your presence is healing.
Yeah.
Like just your presence is a healing presence because people are coming into that field. And there's a lot of things that one can even do to strengthen the aura. And I know you know a lot about that in your practices, and also through the practice of Kundalini on my end, a lot of ways to strengthen that. And one of the things that actually you mentioned that I would love for us to expand on, whether now or at some point, is how to seal those tears that we have in our auras. Because at the beginning stages for me, I had tears everywhere. But I'm aware of that now, but back then, I had, how would I know?
Yeah.
How would you know? And so, but
Yeah.
when you're ready, the information
Yeah. And again, like,
knowledge comes to you.
the kind of information that we're gonna have on the group, sharing, the healers sharing, the readers sharing, like, just so that it's more about like, hey, what is it that, if I, what is it that I need? Like, sometimes you don't even like, there's a whole list of book of people that, if you, oh, there's this, the chiropractic doctor, like, the heart doctor, the uterus doctor, like, you know what I mean? While in the spiritual world, we deal with, like, with this kind of stuff, like, so you need a sound healer, you need, like, you need someone who can read your aura, heal your aura, someone who can take you through the womb space, a lot of, I don't, I'm not a uterus doctor. I'm calling a uterus doctor. Not a gynecologist. However, I can take you to the womb space in the spiritual manner, you know. And so, this is a real thing. Some people, like, they don't even know that that exists. Like, this is, so, and you have an experience with me, you'd be like, oh, wow. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and
You have
but
people that know how to, you know, there's like ego eradicators, basically. So I like to call it because I mean, essentially, and that's another thing that Sister Neva does is, really being able to transform, transform and dismantle the ego, and transform it and understand how to navigate, with that.
so that you can get to that healing, and then
So that you can.
you can get to your abundance, you can get to your powers of manifestation, and don't have to struggle, because all of those things actually is why you're struggling, is why you're suffering. Like the real suffering of the world is because we're not in touch with our spirituality, because we think we're having a physical life, when in reality we're having a spirit. The spirit is having its physical experience basically. So to
Exactly.
return back to that, it's sometimes you're called back. And the thing is this: if you don't listen, it could pause for a minute, but it's going to call you again, and next time it's going to keep knocking you over the head. It'll break your leg, it'll break your hand. It was like, oh yeah, you want to have a physical experience, I'm going to show you a physical experience, and then everything gets harder, your relationship gets harder. Because I remember at the point of my also like you know um my relationships destroyed, financial destroyed, emotional destroyed. Like I was like physically beaten down, many surgeries, like it was like, and that's because the spiritual was like, hey, I'm here. You didn't hear me, I'm knocking you down again. You didn't hear me knocking you down. What?
Exactly.
And I was always like, I would do the math, because in my head I was like a logical person. I would do the math, and like financially, I'm like, I don't understand like why this isn't working. And then boom, like it would happen again. And because I couldn't hold on to my abundance, I didn't know like how, and and all these leaks everywhere. And so these understanding of the spiritual world is very important, so that we can have that spiritual elevation. you know when I started, literally when I started the university with Secret Energy, was like the real, like, and it's so funny. We always think that, especially like, coming from the Catholic world, it's like you're waiting for the afterlife to go to heaven and to have all these things, when in reality you have every experience right here. You know what I
You're
mean?
not recognizing it.
Yeah.
That's,
Right here.
yeah, you're not recognizing it.
When I got there, and I was like, oh wow, this is the real university. And it's in, and you're having, because so much information just comes to you, and your world just starts to fit and make sense. And then you realize that now you start working with your higher self, and you don't have to wait to die or to go to this other life you didn't know what this was. It's right here right now, and yourself is calling yourself. And it's a beautiful journey, like, because you're always protected, because you protect you. Like you
Yeah,
trust you.
you trust you.
You. And it's like, we always say in the tribe, we love we, and it's a beautiful thing, in once you start to realize that, oh, the pain and the suffering was still me, myself, calling myself home. um, and once you, and that's one of the things, in terms of like, how do you know you're making spiritual progress, so that you don't get lost, you don't lose sight of your path. One thing is like, if one recognize, hey, I'm on this spiritual path, I accept. You know what I mean? I realize it's been knocking me over the head, I accept. The second part is like, hey, finding the path, and sometimes that takes a lot of like false leads, and there's nothing wrong with the search. The search is part of the journey, so it can be a beautiful thing to learn about this and learn about that. But it's, again, like Veronica was saying, it's not about the information. Like, because some people, they'll go into the world of information, and oh my god, like they can't come out one funnel after another. You can't come out of the funnels. It could be funnels of conspiracy, funnel of like knowledge here, like funnels of like, whatever guru or spiritual belief or whatever. When you were spiritual inclined, everything you learn, everything. Like it doesn't matter. There's no right, wrong, to the knowledge. It's just knowledge. So you take it with a grain of salt. But that's not all it is, because now you need to practice.
You need to practice it. And that's truly where you begin, you're tested then. you begin to be tested, and some people leave the path, and then
Yeah, and my thing is like, do the work. Like for like a spiritual practice asks you to do the work. You have to meditate. You have to be, and again, because of the religion idea, people think like, oh, if you meditate or you're praying or no, it's like you need to like, because when you meditate, when you go inside, like you really go into yourself now, that is where you learn to hone in and practice to silence the mind, to strengthen the body, connect the body with the spirit, like understand your emotion, so that you don't let your emotion run you, so that you can breathe deep, and then be able to calm yourself, commune with nature. So you need that spiritual practice to actually build your foundation. Because one of the key things that Veronica said was like, when both of her and I, we have similar experiences, by the way. It's like a spontaneous, like boom, like, and then you're like, oh, what is this? Like, if we all the knowledge is like, but the brain is like, way too much processing, like.
what do I do with this?
And so, when you have to build your foundation, because you need to ground yourself into the earth. And that's one of the biggest thing with some of the thing with the conscious community is like, everybody's like, yeah, love and light, like, and then you're like, wait, no, you need to ground. Like, you need to put your foot under
Right. Yes.
and then that's a physical thing. You have to be here. If you keep going up without grounding, this is where you can get lost in la la land. And this isn't la la land. For you to become like adept, you need to like take your spiritual practice seriously, do your studies seriously, and because that's going to be the difference between certain levels. you know
Absolutely.
it is.
Yeah.
And yes, it's a beautiful journey, but it's a journey, so there's ups and downs and twists and turns, and all of it is part of it. And you're going to get challenged by your family members, by your friends, by your job, by like like the life doesn't stop because you're having a spiritual journey. Because sometimes like you'll see like people, and they either like they roam around, and they don't have a job, and for the spiritual journey, yeah, you can have a job. Like, you can be on the strongest spiritual journey. And because sometimes, again, even my own mindset, I had thought that, oh, I needed to be a monk in the mountains somewhere to have this kind of spiritual level, right? you know
Exactly. And then we would be in trouble because obviously we don't all have access
But,
access
but
to
think
the.
about it, right? We're having spiritual, both Veronica and I, we have children. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like, how am I going to close myself up in a monastery when I have a son? And his thing is like, mommy, it's dinner time. Mommy, I need this. Mommy, like, he doesn't care what kind of spiritual love and light I'm having. Like,
No, not at all. Not like just not interested at all whatsoever. But absolutely. I mean, this is about accessibility. It's always accessible to us, but we need to be able to come into the right fields that are going to be there to really like support the journey, especially in the beginning phases, because as the sister said, you're going to experience a lot, and you can get taken by a lot of different currents, and because all of a sudden you enter into the spirit realm, you think that everything's good, everything's positive, everything's okay. And because all of a sudden it has this mask, because spirit also has the mask. And then you realize, then again, you start to realize how deep this really goes. It's like you start to realize, like, oh, okay, I need to be able to recognize and begin to discern. And that's why, once again, it's like the searching is part of the process, because it's actually like attuning your discernment keys, your key to discernment. It's really just practice. It's all there to serve you, but you must practice self-awareness. Like, you must practice these things. You must cultivate a practice, because ultimately spirituality is your action, your application of these things, you applying your practices, and not just talking about your practices. This is really about embodiment. And these are one of the things that we're really going to be able to continue to share in this space, is how to cultivate a practice that is for you, that you resonate with, because it needs to fit with you. It needs to fit with where you are in your phase, in your stage of, this great awakening, or whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't always mean that because the brother's doing this, that's what you need to be doing. Like, these are things at the beginning when you're new, you're like, oh, the brother's doing this, the sister's doing this, I got to get in on that. It's like, why don't you go test it out and find out for yourself if this is something that actually resonates with you? Because this is about you. This is about you cultivating this beautiful understanding and just infinite depth of what you are and who you are, and really be able to be in yourself. This is what it is. It's a practice of you practicing being you. So
Yeah, and one of the things that, as you go through spiritual experience, someone who's having whatever, like, physical experience is that's fine. That's actually part of their growth. And so this spirituality is part of your growth. And so so there's actually no comparison. That's one of the things, like, part of my journey was like being really highly into politics, you know.
right.
And one of the things is, like, if you go on my Facebook page, you're like, find like all of this stuff, and I laugh, and I'm like, because I know some people, like, they'll erase everything, and I'm like, no, I'm not erasing anything. These were all part of my journey,
Right.
and they actually made me stronger. And whether or not now I think their lives don't even matter, because I that don't affect me. But again, these were the processes I needed to go through to get to where I'm at now, and respect for every part, because every part of this world is teaching you, is teaching everybody. The thing is, like, when we are spiritually inclined, and in the conscious community, we are realizing, oh, this is like, it is teaching us. So that's the awakening. Like, you awaken to the fact that, hey, this whole thing has been teaching you the whole
The
time.
whole time. It's never not. Yeah. You really
So when I was partying at the club, I was having a spiritual experience.
absolutely. And again, and I love that you say that, because it's about re- recognizing, like, it's true sight. You know what I mean? You're able to really hone in and recognize, like, oh, that is in that moment you weren't, but again, because this is so outside of time, you realize that this is not the linear experience that I was told that it was, or that I thought that it was, or believed that it was. And then you see how these it works for you. It's teaching you outside of time. I could have a memory of something that happened 15 years ago, but in this now moment, it can serve me.
Yeah.
It can serve me. So don't ever discount anything in your journey. Ever. Don't ever discount anything in your journey, because it is essentially truly there to serve you one way or another, if you choose for it to serve you. If you, because that's another thing. This is your choice. It is a choice to be here. It is a choice to be present. It is a choice to practice and cultivate your practice, to be in the awareness, to be mindful. This is all a choice. You have to choose to be here. And you also have to remember, like, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to be doing this.
Yeah.
You don't have to be doing this. So when we get into these waves of, like, complaining and all these things, it's like, well, you don't have to be doing this. Just remember that this is, and I say this because this is something that has profoundly helped a lot of the stages of where I'm at. Even today, when I just get like, I tend to take on a lot of work, and I have a lot of different projects going on all at once. And then I do need to take that moment to say, wait a minute, I don't have to be doing any of this, do I? No, I don't. Okay, now I can keep going, because it's a process of constantly reconceiving yourself, like moment to moment, sometimes reconceiving yourself and coming back into that space. So you can say, oh yeah, I don't actually have to be doing this, but I'm doing this because I choose to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm here
No,
because
absolutely. And that's like the great thing about this journey of, like, that the cross time lessons, when you start to recognize them, it
yeah,
actually makes it like, wow, I've had an extraordinary life.
I've had an extraordinary life. I'm having an extraordinary life. That's where it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's when the gratitude comes in, then
Talking about
that's
this the
when,
other day.
so like, even so you're even grateful for the bad moments, you
That's
know.
exactly it. Like, just give thanks.
So
Just give thanks.
like, it's so funny, like, when I have arguments with people now, I realize, oh, this is the energy trying to balance its
Yeah, I know we were just talking about that earlier today. It is the energy calling you.
I mean, imagine I was doing a lot of chi practice, like really high, like very much like, and then of course I needed something of balancing out to go low. And and I actually recognized that moment and was like, oh, so this is what this was. So as I'm sitting here, like being in this situation, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna choose to be in that negative situation because I need it.
Yep.
Because I realized I was too high.
It's grounding you. So
It
these,
was grounding me.
yeah, it's grounding you.
Was bringing me back to reality because I was definitely spacing out, you know what I mean? Like, Neva was, Neva
Happens.
told it this morning, Neva was like, you cosmogasm.
Yeah.
So yes, I was in like thrall of cosmogasm today because that was like my last class with Mantak Shia, and it was like, hey, he was working on the Kundalini, and yeah, and so you do need the grounding, and you need, make sure like, okay, yes, you work on these things, but then the reality of my son, is always grounding. The reality of my family is always grounding, and so giving deep appreciation for the roles they play in annoying me.
Absolutely. I don't have to like it. That's another thing. You can choose not to like it, but in the end it's really there to.
And that was the thing as well, because now in those moments, it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't like because there's this understanding, or this is what this is, and so it's like,
Yeah.
so a lot of the negativity doesn't affect me in the negative way. It's literally like, oh, okay, this is that moment that needs to balance out this other, you know, because I was like, I tend to be like pretty high and happy, and I realized that there's an imbalance here. You know what I mean? There's an imbalance here that needs to balance itself out sometimes with some moments, and it's fine just as long as I don't let any of these emotion overwhelm me. I know we were talking about the other night where you're saying, hey, I'm in my emotional body now. This is not the best time to make a decision. You know?
Exactly. That's hugely where I was, but I knew I was there. I
Yes,
recognized.
and then, but you know where you were at, and you recognize the emotion, the moment. If anything, you can even enjoy. That's one of the things we learn about negative emotion. Like, for me, like, I do a lot of cheap practice, so the negative emotions get fed to the mother. So it's like, oh, negative emotion, let's time to feed mother.
Time to feed mother. I know where I'm
You know
taking this.
where you know how to, like, so now, because now I have a relationship with the earth that, so I give to the earth, so therefore now she's gonna give me back, and so it's like, hey, you're gonna feel the love, like you're literally gonna feel the love from the planet, and it's always gonna like take care of you, and because you're taking it, that's you, the planet is you. And so all of these are like things that we we're going to be offering in terms of like, it's real spiritual healing, just so, and being there for each other, because again, throughout this we still have to deal, like, that's why, like, real spiritual healing from mother, really, because we still have to deal with all of it, you know and that's, sometimes that's hard. It's not an easy thing. I know one of the things, like, you'll find in the conscious community, sometimes people, they just want to leave, they want to leave their family, they want to, and it's like, what actually needs, and Veronica and I know this, what actually needs to be done is for us to get closer to our family. And you'll find like a lot of us went back home because that was what was needed, because when they say you have to heal the DNA, you literally, it's not heal the DNA like it's in some other space. It's actually healing the relationships that you have right now with your mom, with your dad, with your brothers and sisters and your sons and daughters. That's healing the DNA, with your aunts and uncles, not someone that's not in front of you, the thing that you have to heal and deal with is like right here, right now. And
Now, yeah,
understanding that is like a beautiful thing because it's reachable.
yes,
The work is reachable, it's tangible, it's not something out in space that you can't, you know, it's all here.
right,
Once you get that, that's where the real spiritual work happen and we're ready. And you know hey, if it's more than a beautiful thing, to me, because my higher self is me right now that you're looking at, you
yeah,
know and that's that merging. We're constantly merging with our higher self and our lower self, which is not a negative thing or bad thing. It's actually it might be a negative thing if I'm thinking about the positive and negative. It's part of it. It's all like, hey, coming in and out of the self. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful journey. Yeah. So,
beautiful journey, giving so much thanks. I
so
think
I don't want to keep you too long because I know we are way over because we've been here since 8 o'clock. Spent a good 40 minutes talking.
great.
You're right, 40 minutes talking and no recording. So I had to come back in again or come forward. But the conversation, maybe this conversation that people needed to hear. So,
Clearly,
uh,
because we're having it. So yes, this is
you know,
exactly what we needed to address.
yeah. Again, like you're not waiting for somebody else. You're waiting for you. You're searching for you.
You're
It's
searching.
not, you're not searching for me. You're searching for you. And, once you see her and you can look into her eyes and be like, oh, he is love. He is, and you give it to yourself. Now, one of the things that you realize, like the reason you fall in love with somebody else is because you see yourself in their eyes.
That's what it is.
You're able to look deeply into their eyes, and what does the eyes do but reflect the image.
Yeah.
And so you're able to look deep in their eyes and see yourself and basically fall in love with yourself over and over and over.
Mhm.
So recognizing that and seeing your real self and with all its flaws, what I mean, and all the bumps and lumps, and say, oh wow, I'm perfect, or I would say I'm perfectly.
Exactly.
So perfectly, um I'm perfectly, like, and that's that's journey. That's the beginning of the journey, and getting there, and taking you through the ups and downs and the emotional upheavals, and um yeah.
Right. And just again, it's like I've said this before, it's the way that we carry these experiences on this side of the track. It does look different. It feels different because it gets lighter. The experiences may get heavier, but the way you carry them gets lighter. So you're literally traveling light.
Yeah. And isn't it was so funny, like I saw that, I was like, literally a lot of things do not hurt my heart. Like
Yeah.
it's even to a state where somebody might think I'm emotionless, and I'm like, no, I'm just so full of, like, it's all love. It's like, oh wow. Like, even when I'm going through the things, and it's like it becomes an understanding of people where they're at. You know what I mean? And even my reaction, being patient with myself, like being, like taking care of myself, like really taking care of myself, being patient with myself when when I'm wrong, or when I'm like going through something, and taking time for myself instead of, like, rushing through things. Like you said, it's an infinite journey. We have, there's no rush. um Sometimes people do come and they're like, hey, they want to do this, and I'm like, it's all right, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll happen. And yeah, yeah, so
Oh, sis, thank you so much.
yeah.
Love this.
So yeah, a bonus portal group, right? And we'll be promoting and letting you know. I'm gonna put the link in the notes, comments, when I and you guys can start joining. And so that we can start the onboarding.
Yeah, the onboarding. We're
um,
just waving you in. Welcome. Let's have some fun.
and yeah, it's gonna be a lot of engagement, but healthy spiritual engagement, not just like talking for the sake of talking. We're like, there's a lot. I mean, and again, if that's where you're at, there's nothing wrong with it.
No, use it at some point.
But it is like, making sure that we do cultivate a practice for ourselves so that we can go through a smooth spiritual transition as we move towards 2021. We're a lot is going to be asked of us. I mean, it's been asking a lot anyway.
Right, exactly.
And that's because you're ready. Like, we all ready. Like, it's not, there's nothing to fear. It's, whatever we go through it together, and um and go to the next stage. We're infinite beings. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
thank you, sis.
yeah. Wholeness.